So welcome back to the post-lunch session of the 33rd IISSM Annual Global Conclave 2023. Planning for humanitarian crisis, planning, early warning, response, relief, preparedness, recovery, and knowledge management. Throwing light on this crucial topic in this session is our keynote speaker, Shri Gopal Krishna Pillai. It's a great honor to have him here with us today. Thank you, sir. Before I invite him for his keynote address, here's a brief introduction about him. Mr. G.K. Pillai is an IAS officer of 1972 batch from Kerala cadre. He retired as Union Home Secretary of India. He's been Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister of Kerala. Prior to that, he held various assignments, including that of District Collector, Quilon, Special Secretary, and Secretary of Health. In the Government of India, he has worked in the Ministries of Defence, Surface Transport, Home and Commerce. He was the Chairman of Board of Approvals for SEZ, Chief Negotiator for India at the WTO and Secretary Commerce, Government of India. He presently serves many companies as member on the board. Shri Gopal Krishna Pillai, I request you, sir, to kindly address the gathering. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank IISSM, its office bearers, and especially Dr. Rajan Medekar for having invited me to address this August gathering. In the morning, you had very distinguished speakers, including Bhattji, who is an inspiration to all of us as to what can be done. There is a separate panel discussion on the subject which was mentioned, and so I will not get into the details of that. I will try to speak something slightly different. First, because it's a post-lunch session and many of you are sleepy, so I'll try to wake you up a little bit with some provocative statements. How many of you order from Swiggy, Zomato, Blinkit, and so on and so forth? Raise your hands. Okay. All of you who do that are in one sense, shall I say, you are the antithesis of your contributing to climate change. It is like people said in the COP28 summit, they calculated all the people who came by private aircraft, special aircraft, and so on for the COP28 summit and said there was something like 4.8 million tons of carbon dioxide was what was contributed by the leaders at the summit to adversely affect the climate. So, there is a great importance to what I call as lifestyle changes. The Prime Minister has mentioned that, so I won't mention it again. But we all have a role to play in disaster management. I am a little cynical because I think to an extent, I think we have almost crossed the tipping point. And therefore, you are going to have more and more disasters. And all of you who are living your normal life in urban centers, not so urban centers, and so on, till it hits you, you will think it is something which happens, it's for that other person, not for me. Now, climate change is for India to handle. It's for, you see in Chennai, you see the floods in the urban areas. I can tell you that a batchmate of mine who was affected by floods, it's not, if you have the entire ground floor, 6 feet of water with mud, staying there for 8 days, that's your life savings. By the time you take it out, almost the foundations have started to get affected, the walls have got affected, and at the age of 70 plus, you're not likely to build another house again. It's a major impact, which people think it would not happen to them till it happens. And you've seen that again happening, again rains in Tamil Nadu, and you can see the people again, the boats and the water flooding. And we never learn. It happens in Delhi, it happens in Gurgaon, it happens in Mumbai, and we never learn. We just think we got used to it. It's part of, we think this is something that happens. And part of the reason is because of increasing urbanization. We've actually built most of our land on what we call as the floodwater plains. Water used to flow, and you blocked that flow, and nature takes its revenge in due course at the appropriate time. So I'm not getting into the humanitarian crisis, what we need to plan and what we need to do. I'll come to that in just a minute. But I just wanted to give you the magnitude of the problem. In the humanitarian crisis today, as a result of conflict alone, there are about 150 million people currently affected in the world. 150 million people. As a result of climate change itself and the displacement that has taken place due to climate change, it's about 70 to 100 million people. Nobody is talking of covering the war, and nobody is saying what is all the bombs that you are dropping on Gaza or whether it's on Ukraine, what is the cost of that in terms of climate? It's another statistic. And for those of you who are working in armament companies around the world, the more the war, the bigger is your profit. Nobody says, no worker in the armament factory is saying, I'll shut down my factory so that less bombs are produced. It's like ITC will not say, cigarette smoking can kill you. But nobody in ITC will say, stop manufacturing cigarettes. You got automobile manufacturers, all cars are killer vehicles. You have more than 150,000 people who die in road accidents every year. Only 2,000 due to terrorism. And maybe if you look at natural disasters, it may be a few thousand, but 150,000 people die in road accidents in India alone. That's where we are world number one. No automobile manufacturer is willing to say that he will reduce the production of cars or make cars safer, not for the person who is driving the car, not seat belts, not seat airbags, because most of the people who die are the two-wheelers and the pedestrians. What are you doing to make sure that the two-wheelers and the pedestrians you hit with on a car or a truck, you make it a little safer for them? That is a little bit of what we call as the economy. Look at all of you drive cars. And if you see, I don't know whether any of you have seen a speedometer in the car. Just next time when you get into your car, please look at your speedometer. It says from 0 to 220 or 240, some have 300 even. It's 0, 220. And where is 100? It is below the halfway mark. So when you're traveling even at 80 kilometers or 100 kilometers, psychologically, you think you are driving quite very slow because you're less than half of the speedometer. And we have tried to tell automobile manufacturers, please have 0 to 100 here because you cannot travel at more than 100 on Indian roads. And then from 100 to 220, you can have a small little dashboard because you can't travel. And anybody who has ever driven a car, even on the expressway, you know you cannot travel at more than 100 for even a few seconds before you have to slow down for some reason or the other. But they will not do it. Every single advertisement of an automobile company will speak of speed. And they'll put the small little disclaimers at the bottom saying, these are performed by experts on a controlled environment, please do not imitate. But do you ever see those things? You are watching the main ad, you never see the disclaimer. And this is where I call, somebody mentioned today, corporate social responsibility. Do you have any senior manager, MD, chairman of an automobile company who says, I will stop such advertisements? I was very glad today to see in the newspapers that Hero, for the first time, if you've seen today's paper, they say, be a hero. How you be a hero? By not over-speeding. It's the first time that an ad has come by that. So I'm hoping that that is the first sign of change. Now, coming to the point of disaster relief, disaster humanitarian crisis, I will not go into the technical details of how you will, what all things you will do, but I think what is most important is for institutes like IISSM, the government, NDRM, and so on, to see what could happen and where. And I think it's important for us to map areas where disaster is going to happen. You know which are the areas which are earthquake prone. You know which are the areas which are flood prone, which are likely to get waterlogging. It's very easy. It's mapped. In fact, if you see the Chennai thing, all the papers pointing out committee reports which point out that every area which got flooded was part of a drainage system on which people have built a township or hundreds of houses and colonies. And water finds its own level. So knowing this, that this is there, what will you do rather than wait for the next flooding to take place? Once you've mapped all these areas, can you then make sure that you provide enough budget and resources to make sure that the storm drainage, the drainage systems, whatever you need to do is done before the next flooding takes place? If you don't do that, then I think will always be responding. And we are very good responders. It is like, it has taken us, and I know Mr. Nitin Gadkari spoke this morning, and for all his achievements on building roads and expressways and bridges and tunnels and so on and so forth, Mr. Nitin Gadkari has also admitted that his biggest failure has been he has not been able to tackle the issue of road safety successfully. Because the more roads you build at which you can travel faster, it means more people are going to die. Statistically, scientifically established. If you look at Delhi's Chandni Chowk area, I don't know, many of you have been to Delhi's Chandni Chowk. The fatalities in Chandni Chowk in the last 5 years, the entire Chandni Chowk area, which has more than 100,000 of cars, not one person has died. Why? Because if you travel in Chandni Chowk, you can travel only at 10 kilometers an hour. So even if you hit somebody, you're not going to kill him. So speed makes an impact. But unless you understand the basic principles of where these things are going to happen, and I'm mentioning again and again on the road, because all of you drive on roads, and you will see studies which we are doing now and which government has taken us almost so many decades to understand, and what we call as the knowledge economy and the need for understanding more and more. I can prevent 60% of the road fatalities just by better road design. I assume you will make a mistake. I assume the driver will make the mistake. I assume the pedestrian is going to make the mistake. I assume that the guy is going to be talking on the mobile while crossing the road. And I can still make sure that 60% less fatalities take place through better road design. That is the use of knowledge. Now, and this is the last point which I'm going to make, because disasters are going to happen. They're going to take place in much larger in ferocity, more intense, and the most special feature about the disasters that are going to take place in terms of humanitarian crisis are going to take place primarily due to, one, conflict. You will have conflicts within countries and outside. Look at the civil war in Myanmar is putting refugees into India. At the moment, it's 60,000 refugees, so it's not a big problem. But when it becomes 100,000, when it becomes 200,000, then it becomes a problem. It doesn't become just a refugee problem, it can also become a security problem. And this is something which we have to plan, we have to anticipate, and be prepared to handle such a situation. And climate change is going to be equally important for us. We know the areas which are in danger. We know the areas that are going to be likely to be in danger. And I'm just giving you a simple example of Kashmir, which nobody has talked about too much. Everybody has talked in the last few years, say that number of tourists to Kashmir has become 7 lakhs, it's become 12 lakhs, it's become 14 lakhs, and so on. It's fine. But every place has a carrying capacity. We've seen that there are enough scientific studies that a place can only take so many tourists. Beyond that, there's an environmental and a damage and a deterioration which will affect not just the quality of life, but also result in a humanitarian or a disaster. And therefore, unless we think about it today and start planning for it tomorrow, we will always run into these problems that this is something which this will happen, this will keep on happening, we can't do anything about it. And that is why it is so important for us, as was mentioned by previous speakers, the importance of sustainability, of, in one sense, changing your own lifestyles. Will you travel less? If you travel 500 kilometers a month, will you travel next month less? Will you use less water? Will you use less electricity? Because if you don't, the demand from you, from us, from me, towards the government is that we want more. We want more of everything. So government is going to 50 megawatts, 50 gigawatts of power is going to be produced because there's a demand from the people. Because if you don't provide that power, then that government is supposed to be a failure. And therefore, that demand is something which, if you do not curb that demand over the next 10, 15, 20 years, while making sure that people have a good quality, decent quality of life, you will find that we are back to square one. And lastly, I'll end by thanking and in one sense expressing my gratitude to IISSM and their dedicated batch of trainers. Many of you, I don't know whether you know, that there are more than 3 lakh people they have trained who are there in different parts of India. And whenever you get into a major disaster or a problem, you will find that perhaps one of them who have been trained by this institute will be there to help you and to assist you. And for that, I think we should be grateful that they have taken this initiative starting 30 years ago, which is helping to mitigate the disaster that are bound to happen in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for articulating your thoughts and telling us how each and every one of us can contribute to mitigating the imminent crisis, imminent danger. Thank you so much.